Fear the pale blue before the signal episode 1. The closer Neil Brennan was already dead when Renn parked on Bagley Avenue. He just hadn't been told yet. She cut the engine on the rental and sat with both hands flat on the steering wheel. The block ran west toward Corktown, brick row buildings shouldering close, a few windows lit orange in the November dark. The Verner's sign on the corner Bodega had one dead letter in it. A dog somewhere down the block was barking at nothing, or at her, or at something she couldn't see. She waited for it to stop. It didn't stop. She got out. The temperature had dropped 12 degrees since she'd landed at Metro. Her breath came out visible, and she'd left her good coat at the airport Marriott because good coats get remembered. The one she wore now was a gray canvas work jacket she'd bought at a Carhartt outlet in Romulus on the drive-in. $52. She'd pay cash for everything until she was done, and then leave it all behind. Brennan lived on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse building on the south end of the block. The building was called the Packer Lofts, though nothing had been packed there in 40 years, and the buzzer panel at the front door had his name typed on a faded paper strip. She didn't use the buzzer. The door lock was a Schlage retrofit that someone had installed incompetently enough that the latch plate didn't quite see. She noticed it when she did the address walk the previous afternoon. She pressed her shoulder into the door and it gave. The stairwell smelled like old timber and someone's cooking, cumin and hot oil drifting down from the 2nd floor. She went up. Her shoes on the stairs were quiet but not silent, and she didn't try for silence. Silent movement through a building raises questions in anyone who hears it. She moved like a resident coming home from a long shift. 3rd floor. The hallway ran the length of the building and had 2 units. Brennan was 3B facing the street. She stood outside the door for a moment and listened. The television was on. A news anchor's cadence, the particular flattened rhythm of someone reading copy about something that didn't matter. She could hear him moving. The sound of a refrigerator opening. She knocked twice. The television went quieter but didn't turn off. Footsteps across bare floor. A pause at the door that lasted 3 seconds longer than it should have. Who's there? Building management. There's a water issue on the 2nd floor and I need to check your lines. Another pause. She heard his breathing change. The door opened 4 inches against a chain. His face in the gap was exactly the face in his file. Mid-40s, heavier than his last ICD photo, a 3-day beard going gray at the jaw. His eyes moved past her shoulder to the empty hallway and came back. "It's 9:40 at night," he said. "Water doesn't wait, I just need 5 minutes." He was trying to decide if she was legitimate, not if she was dangerous. "Give me a second," he said. He closed the door. She heard the chain slide off and the deadbolt turn, and then the door opened wide. He'd stepped back from it, which meant he was still moving. She came in and closed the door behind her. The loft was one long room. Kitchen at the rear, a couch and television in the middle, a bed visible behind a partial wall to the left. Books stacked on every available surface. A large desk against the far windows with 2 monitors on it, both dark. The desk had a worn leather edge pad and a coffee mug with a NASA logo on it that had probably not been purchased for the NASA Association. Papers in loose piles. A printer. An external hard drive that had already been dealt with, she was certain, given how the ICD had tracked him, but she'd check it anyway. Brennan stood near the kitchen counter wearing wool socks and an Ohio State sweatshirt that was too big for him. He'd lived in Detroit for 6 years and he still dressed like Columbus. His hands were at his sides. One of them held a butter knife he'd apparently been using when she knocked. He was still holding it and he didn't know he was holding it. "Which line specifically?" he said. "I'm sorry. You said water lines. Which one?" "My kitchen's fine, I was just at the sink." His breathing had changed at the door. Some part of him had understood from the first knock. His jaw was working slightly, the muscles at the hinge of it pulling and releasing, and his weight had shifted back from the counter without him choosing to shift it. "Neil," she said. His face changed. The butter knife came up a few inches, not deliberate, just the hand responding to what the brain already understood. "Who are you?" "My name is Renn. I work for the same organization you used to work for." He didn't move. His jaw tightened and his shoulders went up and he held very still the way animals hold still when there's nowhere to run. The butter knife was still in his hand. "The Collier woman," he said. "You found her." "I found you first." "She doesn't know anything. I didn't tell her anything that matters. I gave her a name, one facility, that's all, and the name was Neil. Wrong anyway, the facility name was wrong. I gave her a wrong designation on purpose so that if anyone followed up, they'd hit a dead end. I was protecting the program. I was protecting. Neil, she said again, and her voice didn't rise. Stop talking. He stopped. His mouth closed and his eyes went very still, and he was looking at her with the particular focused attention of a man doing math he already knew the answer to. My daughter's at Michigan State, he said. She's 19. Her name is. I don't want to know her name. She doesn't know anything. My wife, my ex-wife, they're not part of this. They won't be part of this. That's the only promise I can make you, and I'm making it. He stood there in his wool socks and his too big sweatshirt, and his eyes were wet, but he didn't cry. He swallowed once. His chin dropped. The butter knife hit the floor. He'd let it go. He hadn't thrown it, just opened his fingers and let it fall. He asked her one more thing. His voice was low, and he looked at the window when he asked it, not at her, the way people look away from things they don't want an answer to but can't stop themselves from asking. Does it matter? He said. Anyone? What I did? What I tried to do? She thought about the question, not as a courtesy. She gave it the actual consideration it deserved, which was more than most people would have. It matters that you did it, she said. Whether it changes anything is a different question. He nodded, like that was the answer he'd expected, and he'd needed to hear it anyway. She was thorough and she was precise, and she worked the way she always worked, without hesitation and without rushing. Because hesitation made things worse and rushing made things messy, and neither outcome served anyone. His hands were shaking by the end, and she held his left arm at the elbow because his legs were going and she didn't want him to fall and hurt himself on the edge of the counter. That was a practical consideration. She told herself it was a practical consideration, and that was what it was. He went down slowly. She guided the descent. The wool socks made a soft sound on the hardwood, and then he was still, and the kitchen was quiet except for the television in the other room, the anchor still reading copy, something about a city council vote in Phoenix that nobody would remember in a week. She stood in the kitchen for a moment. Her breathing was even. Her hands were steady. The cold from outside had worked its way into the loft despite the radiator clanking in the corner, and she could smell the cumin from the second floor, still faint now, and the specific dry smell of old books that filled the room like something that had been accumulating for years. She called it in. First close complete, she said. Bagley Avenue, ready for secondary confirmation. The voice on the channel was flat and clean and came through with no geographic markers, no static, the kind of audio quality that didn't come from any commercial infrastructure. Confirmed. Collier. Tomorrow morning. She moved her timeline. She's filing something tonight. Renn looked at the window. The dog had stopped barking at some point. She hadn't noticed when. What time? She was at the Free Press building as of 40 minutes ago, probably still there. That's not a problem. It becomes a problem if it transmits. It won't. She spent 20 minutes on the loft, the external hard drive, his phone, which she found in the bathroom where he'd left it when he answered the door. A detail she noted because it meant he'd considered calling someone in the time between her knock and his opening the door, considered it and decided against it, or decided it was too late. His laptop, a shoebox at the back of his bedroom closet that held printed pages, a burner phone still in its retail packaging, and a folded envelope that had been sealed and then opened and was empty. She photographed everything before she touched it and documented the removal sequence to channel. The bookshelf beside the desk ran floor to ceiling and held more volumes than she could count, paperbacks and hardcovers mixed without apparent system, history and biography, and a section of what looked like astronomy texts, a few fiction titles she didn't recognize. Someone had lived inside these books. Someone had spent a significant portion of his adult life in rooms like this one, reading things that had nothing to do with the program, thinking thoughts that had nothing to do with the program, being a person the program had no file on. She was almost done when she found the photograph. It was tucked inside a hardcover on the desk, Caro's first LBJ volume, used as a bookmark about 2/3 through. A family photo, the kind made at one of those chain portrait studios, the backdrop a neutral gray. A woman in her mid-40s with dark hair and a genuine smile. A teenage girl, maybe 16 in the photo, probably the Michigan State daughter now, making a face at the camera. Brennan younger, maybe 10 years ago, standing slightly apart from them the way men who don't know what to do with their hands stand in photos. All three of them wearing coordinated burgundy. Someone had planned that. Someone had spent time coordinating the colors so the family would look like a family in the photograph. Renn held it for a moment. Then she put it in the inside pocket of the canvas work jacket. She didn't examine why. She finished her sweep, turned off the lights the way they'd been when she arrived, and left. The dog was gone from wherever it had been. The block was quiet. Her rental sat under a dead streetlight, and she drove it west on Bagley and then south on Michigan Avenue because she knew the route now and she didn't have to think about it. Michigan Avenue at this hour had the specific quality of a city between things. Not dead, not moving. The lights ran ahead of her in a long sequence, green to yellow to red, and the storefronts were dark except for a gas station on the corner of 18th that had a few cars at the pumps, and a laundromat 2 blocks further east still running, the machines turning behind glass, a woman inside folding something in the fluorescent light, a liquor store with its security gate half down, a barber shop with a hand-lettered sign in the window that said closed for season in black marker on white cardboard. Detroit in November had an exhausted quality she recognized from other cities she'd worked in, the particular look of a place that had been through more than it was going to explain to you. She stopped at a red light on Michigan and Trumbull, and a man in a down vest crossed in front of her, moving fast, his breath coming out in hard white puffs, going somewhere he needed to be at 10:15 on a Tuesday in November. She watched him until he reached the far curb and turned and disappeared down a side street. The light changed. She drove. The Free Press building was on West Lafayette. She parked 2 blocks east in a surface lot off Shelby that charged $5 after 8 and found a vending machine to break a 20 because she was still paying cash. The building had its lights on in the upper floors. She stood on the Lafayette sidewalk in the cold and looked at the lit windows and pulled out her phone and ran the name Dana Collier in the ICD internal directory. She accessed through a proxy that looked like a weather app. Dana Collier had a staff page on the publication's website. Midwest Technology Observer, a trade publication covering aerospace and defense procurement with a sidebar operation in general tech reporting. Her byline photo was recent, a professional headshot, the kind reporters get made when they move up from contributor to staff. Early 30s, a direct way of looking at the camera. She'd broken a story 2 years ago about a classified procurement contract that turned out to be a genuine piece of journalism, correctly sourced, correctly reported, immediately buried by every major outlet that ran it because it didn't fit the frame they'd built for defense stories. That story was why Brennan had gone to her. She'd gotten something real once. She was someone who'd look at an anomaly and not assume the anomaly was wrong. The ICD had a file on her going back 3 years. Standard monitoring. She'd made 2 FOIA requests that touched adjacent territory. She'd attended a conference in Washington where 2 ICD-adjacent contractors had presented. None of it would have risen to the level of action if Brennan hadn't put her name in his mouth to the wrong person at the wrong time, which was what happened when analysts spent 15 years inside the program and started to believe the program had a conscience. Renn went in through the lobby. The building had a security desk, but the guard was watching something on his phone with one earbud in. She walked past him with the particular quality of movement that says, "I belong here," and people who want to be challenged walk differently. He looked up once and looked back down. The directory board said the Midwest Technology Observer occupied the 7th floor. The elevator was slow. She took the stairs. The 7th floor was an open-plan office with the lights on in one section, the northeast corner cluster, and off everywhere else. She could hear a keyboard before she saw the person behind it. Regular keystrokes, not fast, the pace of someone writing carefully and going back. A space heater running nearby, the ticking of a thermal coil, the particular smell of dust burning off a heating element that hadn't been used since last winter. Dana Collier was at a desk in the far corner. She had her jacket on, a gray wool blazer, and her hair pulled back. She was reading something on her screen and typing. A takeout container was open on the desk beside her keyboard, Thai food from somewhere. the smell of lemongrass and fish sauce mixing with the burnt dust from the heater. Cardboard coffee cup from a place called Astro Coffee on Milwaukee Avenue. The logo, a rough cartoon astronaut. The cup still half full and probably cold. Collier heard her. She turned and her face went through 3 expressions in about 1 second. The building's closed, Collier said. The lobby guard has 1 earbud in. Collier looked at the door to the stairwell that Renn had just come through. She looked at the elevator, which was on the other side of the floor. She looked at her phone, which was on the desk to her right. "I'm going to call security," Collier said. Her voice was controlled. She'd done interviews in bad situations before. She was running on that muscle memory. "You can do that," Renn said. "You want to hear what I have to say first. Who are you?" "I'm someone who needs to know what you were given and what you've done with it." "I don't know what you're talking about." "You're filing a story tonight. I need to know what's in it." Collier's hand moved toward her phone. Renn didn't move. She let the hand get there, let Collier pick the phone up. "I'm going to need you to think very carefully," Renn said. "About what calling security means, about what goes with that call. If this becomes a public situation, if my name goes anywhere, if tonight becomes a story, then what happens next is substantially worse for everyone, including people you care about." Collier set the phone down. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were clear, no water in them, and she was angry, which was better than frightened. Frightened people make unpredictable decisions. Angry people calculate. "That's a threat," Collier said. "It's information. What you do with information is up to you. I know who you work for. You don't actually. Brennan told me about the organization. He told me what it does. He gave me a facility name and a date range, and I have been able to independently. The facility name he gave you was wrong." That stopped her. She'd known it was possible. Her chin came up a fraction and her eyes went to the screen, to the 4,700 words she'd been building for months, and came back. "The date range," Renn said. "The actual date range of the activity at that location is different from what he gave you, and the nature of the activity is different. What he gave you was a partial truth designed to direct attention away from what actually matters. He was protecting the program. He was trying to give you something that looked real enough to print and couldn't be verified enough to stand up. Why would he do that? Because he cared about you. He wanted to give you something. He wanted someone on the outside to know that the something existed. He just couldn't give you the real thing and live with himself." The space heater ticked. Something in the floor above them moved, probably the building settling in the cold. "Where is he?" Collier said. Renn didn't answer. Collier's face did something that wasn't a single emotion. Her hand was flat on the desk. Her fingers pressed down until the tips went pale. "Did you? I need to know what you've filed, what you've sent, who you've talked to. You need to tell me where he is. I need to know what's out there, and I need to know right now." "I'm not going to, Dana." Renn's voice was the same volume it had been the entire time. "I need you to understand that I am not going to leave this building without that information. That is not a variable. What is a variable is what happens next. You can give it to me, and this is the end of your involvement, and you go back to covering defense procurement, and your name is never in any file that matters. Or you don't, and it goes differently. I'd rather it not go differently." Collier was looking at her, really looking the way a journalist looks when they're reading a source trying to locate the true thing underneath the performance. She held still for a long time. "I sent a query to my editor 3 hours ago," she said finally. "An outline, no specifics. I wanted to know if we'd support a longer investigation. Did your editor respond?" "Not yet. He doesn't work this late." "Who else have you contacted about this?" "Nobody. I was being careful. I was still trying to verify that." She stopped. "The facility name, I was trying to verify it. Is the draft saved anywhere off this machine?" Collier's jaw tightened again. She didn't want to answer that. She answered anyway. "The query email, that's it." Renn looked at the screen. The document open on it was 4,700 words. She could see that from the word count in the lower corner. Collier had been working on this for a long time. She'd been careful and patient, and she'd gotten further than almost anyone ever got, and everything she'd built was built on a lie that Brennan had constructed to protect her by misdirecting her, and she was never going to know that. "I need you to delete the draft," Renn said. "Email your editor and tell him you're pulling the query. The story didn't hold up. Then clear the sent folder, the email chain with your contact as well." "My contact? Neil Brennan?" "Yes." Collier's mouth pressed together. Her eyes were still clear and still angry, and now there was something else in them, the particular look of someone assembling a picture they don't want to have assembled. "And if I do all that," Collier said, "you go home, you cover defense procurement, you're alive and working, and your name stays out of anything that would complicate that. And if I don't?" Renn didn't answer. She didn't need to. Collier sat there for a long moment. The space heater ticked. The takeout container sat open and the food had gone cold. Her coffee was cold. She'd been sitting here in the cold dark of this corner of this floor for hours, working on something she believed in, something she'd been patient about, and the patience was going to come to nothing. She pulled up her email. She typed the message to her editor and read it back once and sent it. She went to sent mail and deleted it. She went to the email chain with Brennan's name on it, an encrypted account she'd probably set up specifically for this, and she deleted the chain. She opened the document on her screen, and Renn watched her hand hover over the keyboard for 3 full seconds before she selected all and deleted. She didn't save it. She stared at the empty document for a moment. Then she closed it without saving, and the prompt asking if she wanted to save came up, and she clicked "Don't save," and it was gone. "The query email," Renn said. "I already sent folder, delete it from sent." Collier had already done it. She had. Renn had watched her, but she turned back to the email client and checked, and it was gone, and she showed Renn the empty sent folder, and Renn looked. "The Brennan email chain," Renn said. "Is that in trash?" Collier emptied the trash. Renn looked at the desk, the takeout container, the cold coffee, a reporter's notebook, spiral bound, the cover bent and soft from being carried. She looked at the notebook. Collier saw her looking. "It's notes from other stories," Collier said. "Nothing about this." Renn picked it up anyway and flipped through it. Interview notes, a staff meeting agenda, a list of sources with phone numbers for what looked like a story about FAA contract delays. Nothing about the ICD, nothing about Brennan. She put it down. "Is there anything on your personal phone about this story?" Renn said. "No." "Text messages with your contact?" "No." "We used the encrypted email." "Nothing at your home?" "No." Renn looked at her. Collier met the look. "I want to be clear about something," Collier said. Her voice had steadied. She was doing the angry calculating again. "If something happens to me, if I get sick or have an accident or my car goes off a road somewhere, I have people who know my name and know the general shape of what I was working on, and they will know it wasn't an accident." "That's smart," Renn said. "Keep doing that." She meant it. It was the right move, having people who knew. It was also not a complete protection, but it was better than nothing. And Collier had earned the small comfort of hearing that the thing she'd done to protect herself was the right thing to do. Renn left her there in the corner of the 7th floor with her cold coffee and her cleared hard drive and the space heater ticking in the dark. She took the stairs back down. The lobby guard had switched ears. His eyes went to her, and he nodded the way people nod at strangers in buildings when it's late and nobody wants trouble, and she nodded back, and the glass door opened onto Lafayette, and the cold came in hard. She called it in from the car. "Secondary complete," she said. "No transmission." The query email was sent to an editor with no specifics and has been recalled. Primary material deleted from machine. Brennan chain cleared. The editor received the query email. The voice said, "He hasn't opened it. You can't verify that. He'll open it in the morning and find a recall. Standard procedure for a reporter pulling a story. It'll look exactly like what it is. Assuming he doesn't discuss it with her directly. If he does, she'll tell him the story didn't hold up. She'll stick to it. She wants to keep her job and her life." A pause on the channel, the clean, placeless silence of ICD infrastructure. "She's a loose end," the voice said. "She's a contained loose end. You close her, you create the story she was trying to write. There are people who know her name, she told me directly. They don't know enough to. Right now they don't. If she disappears, they start asking. She's more useful alive and afraid than gone and remembered." Another pause, longer. "Document the recommendation and your reasoning," the voice said. "If it goes wrong, it's on your record." Understood. She drove back up Michigan Avenue, and the city went dark on either side of her. The long avenues running east and west with their blocks of brick and vacancy, and the occasional lit window. The laundromat on Bagley still open. The machines turning behind the glass. A woman inside folding something Renn couldn't see. Steam from a grate rising and thinning against the dark sky. She passed the surface lot where she'd parked for the Brennan address walk the day before. She passed a diner on Verner with its lights on and 2 people visible in a window booth, leaning toward each other over coffee cups. She didn't look at them long. At the Marriott, she parked in the structure and sat in the rental for a minute with the engine off. Her hands were flat on her thighs. She was tired in the specific way of work completed, different from the tired of waiting. Her right shoulder ached where she'd taken a hit years ago in a different city, a different operation, the scar tissue reacting to the cold the way it always did below 40 degrees. She breathed once slowly through her nose. Then she took the photograph out of the inner pocket of the canvas work jacket. The studio lighting was flat and professional, everything soft and even. The woman with the genuine smile, the teenager making a face. Brennan standing slightly apart with his hands at his sides, unable to make himself fit fully into the frame even when someone had arranged him for the photograph. The burgundy was the detail that got her. Someone had coordinated that. Someone had called and said we should match, we should show up looking like we belong together, and Brennan had gone along with it, had stood in his kitchen somewhere in Columbus or wherever they'd lived then, and had put on a burgundy shirt because his family was taking a picture, and he wanted to look like he belonged there. She should put it in the bag with his other materials. The bag would go into a drop point on her way out of the city, and it would be incinerated within 24 hours. She put the photograph back in her pocket. She sat there another moment with her hands flat on her thighs, and the parking structure quiet around her, and the cold coming in through the doors of the rental. Somewhere in the city, there was a Michigan State freshman who thought her father worked for a government contractor that handled data security for satellite communications infrastructure. That was what he'd told them. It was even partly true. She would find out at some point that her father was gone, and she would be told it was a car accident, and she would not believe it fully, the way people don't believe things fully when the explanation is too clean. She'd carry that not quite believing for the rest of her life. Renn got out of the car and went inside. The Marriott bar was closed. The lobby had the specific silence of hotel lobbies at 12:40 a.m. A security guard at the desk scrolling his phone, the fountain turned off, the lights dimmed to the late-night setting. She walked to the elevator and pressed 7. The door closed and the car rose and she watched the numbers. In her room, she set the canvas jacket on the chair by the window. She didn't take the photograph out. She left it where it was and washed her face and looked at herself in the bathroom mirror for a moment with the water still running. The fluorescent light overhead very white and very flat. The face in the mirror a face she'd been carrying for 39 years and had stopped expecting to surprise her. She turned off the light and went to bed. Through the window, the city was a low orange glow against a sky with no stars. She lay on her back and her breathing slowed, and the room was quiet and dark, and somewhere under the quiet she could hear, very faintly, the sound of the freeway, the trucks moving through the night.